Celebrations in the streets as the Soviet coup collapses. And Moscow awaits the return of Mikhail Gorbachev. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. Gorbachev is flying to Moscow. The Kremlin coup is over. The failed coup makers in disgrace and apparently on the run. Mikhail Gorbachev is back in charge, back as president, but not yet back in Moscow. His troubles and those of the Soviet Union are far from over. Gorbachev apparently has been in the Crimea. He is reported flying home right now. About the 3 days that shook the world, Tom Fenton in Moscow begins our coverage.
The first concrete sign that the coup had failed came when the tanks began rolling out of the city. The army was no longer supporting the hardliners who toppled Gorbachev. The departing armor was waved on by the Muscovites who had refused to give up their new freedoms.
I personally had to decide to become a free man or to remain a slave.
Thousands emerged victors this morning after a wet and nerve-wracking night of protecting the Russian parliament where Boris Yeltsin had been holding out since Monday. It was their bodies that held the tanks back rather than the barricades. 4 civilians were killed by advancing tanks, but the soldiers refused to inflict mass casualties by storming the parliament. Many were the same age as the protesters, and most chose the same side. We used to think the young people were not political, says this man, but they took a stand. At rallies throughout the city, people of all ages celebrated the announcement that the ringleaders of the coup had resigned. This veteran of the early days of communism says, "I have never been so happy in my life. I am so happy I have to cry." In a dramatic gesture, a number of high-ranking officials boarded planes to fly to the Crimea to see Gorbachev. They included 4 leaders of the coup who apparently went to plead for forgiveness. Gorbachev announced they would be fired, and the chief Soviet prosecutor opened a criminal investigation into their activities. Boris Yeltsin, who symbolized defiance to the coup, has emerged with immensely strengthened popularity. His supporters are determined to develop democracy in the Soviet Union. We don't want an evil empire, says this official. We want a new direction, a renaissance. These were 3 days that shook the Soviet Union and gave the rest of the world a scare. Now that Gorbachev is back in power, he still faces the same terrible economic problems, but at least he now has some sort of insurance against another coup in the near future. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Moscow.
The story from inside the Soviet Union has been changing rapidly, the impact felt around the world. CBS News correspondents are standing by tonight in Moscow, Washington, Kennebunkport, and here in our New York headquarters. Anthony Mason is with Yeltsin freedom backers at the Russian parliament in Moscow. Anthony?
Dan, it was another day of rumor and confusion around Boris Yeltsin's White House, the center of resistance during the coup, but the crowd could smell victory.
Dawn along the barricades of the Russian parliament brought a sense of relief. Yeltsin supporters had endured a tense night, and inside the White House, people could sense the tide had now turned.
I think I have the impression we have now the overhand.
The upper hand.
The upper hand, yes.
In the grand parliamentary chambers, Boris Yeltsin promised again to bring the coup's organizers to justice. His words broadcast to damp supporters outside. Their ranks were still growing. Cellist Mstislav Rostropovich had flown in from Paris.
All night I not sleep because I think that's the most dangerous moment, not only for my country, but whole world.
Then Yeltsin broke the news that the emergency committee was reportedly on its way to the airport. An excited parliament sensed the coup was crumbling.
Well, I think they are all running wrecks from, sinking ship,
Former KGB agent Oleg Kalugin.
They miscalculated. They miscalculated.
How do you explain that?
Well, because they never know the real situation in the country, I know how sometimes the reports are concocted for the the top leadership just to say things are smooth enough and go on.
Up on the 5th floor in a makeshift office, the editors of the newspaper Rossiya shut down during the coup, Xeroxed the latest news, then passed it out to a hungry crowd, which sensed history in the making.
That is like a challenge in the country. It's like a test for democracy.
Through the afternoon, as more and more soldiers showed their loyalties, arriving at the Russian parliament building to thunderous cheers, the crowd began to realize that democracy might just pass the test. It's kind of ironic that the struggle for power these past few days has centered not around the Kremlin, but around Boris Yeltsin's White House. The White House can now claim to stand for something that the Kremlin never has, the struggle for democracy. Dan?
Thanks, Anthony. Jim Stewart is at the Pentagon, where U.S. officials believe it wasn't just people power in the streets, but the coup leader's own inability to command Soviet military power that did them in. Jim, what are you hearing about this?
Well, Dan, the consensus here is that the coup planners never had the heart, the soul, or the muscle of the Red Army behind them in this crisis. The vast majority of units lay utterly dormant during the takeover. Most units never received any orders at all. Most of the top generals were not involved in the planning before the coup took place, and then some switched sides to Boris Yeltsin. Sources say even the most visible show of force, the storming of a barricade this morning, was a result of panic by some young soldiers and officers, and not a concerted effort by the troops to crush Yeltsin and his followers. The bottom line from here is that Boris Yeltsin, democracy, and the people of Moscow may have won, but only because the Red Army, the largest force on earth, never really bought into this coup. Dan?
Jim, thanks. Correspondent Bert Quint has been out and around sampling Moscow public opinion about the collapse of the coup. He found it all jubilation, disbelief, and indifference.
When Vladimir and his friends heard the news, they set up a celebration dinner right here on Arbat Street. We'll love one another, he said, and those friends abroad even more. We're going back to work, Vladimir declared, like all normal people. Near the Russian Parliament building, the heart and nerve center of opposition to the coup in Moscow, many who had rallied here to defend it from possible military attack were happy and relieved to go home.
Yesterday people were like half dead, and today the light comes back to their eyes.
But many weren't sure what was really happening and weren't willing to take the end of the coup on trust. They stalled efforts to take down their barricades and stayed here again tonight. We can't be sure the military won't come back, some said, and we won't be satisfied until all the leaders of the coup are in jail. Then there was the majority of Muscovites who had stayed silent while the coup was on and didn't do any public celebrating or grumbling today. That left the question of how much support Gorbachev really has still in doubt. The song these street musicians sang tonight said neither the country's problems nor Gorbachev are likely to improve with age. Bert Quint, CBS News, Moscow.
And still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, more analysis and coverage of the coup that couldn't, including Hero Yeltsin and Gorbachev's phone call to President Bush. So stay here with us.
Throughout history, great barriers have been discovered and built. Heart's Blockade for dogs and cats is one of them. Used as directed, Heart's Blockade creates an invisible barrier protecting your pets from fleas and ticks before they get a chance to live on your pet. Heart's Blockade repels and kills fleas and ticks, including ticks that carry Lyme disease, reducing the chances of causing discomfort to your pet. Helping to improve your pet's quality of life is your responsibility. Helping you do that is Heart's.
If your doctor has recommended Metamucil and you like the results, but you don't like those glasses of thick liquid, change to FiberCon. Get the same fiber action in easy-to-swallow tablets. Get doctor-recommended FiberCon.
Presenting the Gripper Zipper from Ziploc. Now the easiest closing bag there is. In fact, even the little ones can close it. Hello.
Feel the zipper. It's locking. Feel it close the first time, every time.
Ziploc bags with the Gripper Zipper.
Mikhail Gorbachev got a phone call through to President Bush today. Mr. Bush hailed Gorbachev's return as the constitutional leader of the whole Soviet Union, but he also praised Boris Yeltsin's role. Our White House correspondent Susan Spencer is with the president in Maine. Susan, good evening.
Good evening, Dan. Gorbachev, in fact, had been liberated for only about an hour when he and Mr. Bush talked. A spokesman later calling that conversation very emotional on both sides. The president had just taken his boat out when abruptly Fidelity changed course, responding to a cryptic radio message that a head of state was calling. On land, Mr. Bush learned it was, finally, Gorbachev.
He was elated, and it sounded like for the last hour he was back fulfilling his duties and calling the shots. He stated his sincere appreciation to the people of the United States and others around the world for their support for democracy and reform.
The president took the 20-minute call in the family bedroom, Mrs. Bush listening nearby. Gorbachev told him his personal guards had stayed loyal and that, contrary to earlier reports, he is in good health. As to why the coup fell on its face,
They underestimated democracy and freedom, and you can't put it back in a box, these totalitarian systems. They tried and they failed, and democracy prevailed and reform prevailed. And that's what this is all about.
Mr. Bush declared it a good day for U.S.-Soviet relations, but it may also be a confused day for U.S. policy. Does the man of the hour, Boris Yeltsin, now deserve equal treatment with Gorbachev?
We will obviously try to cooperate with the Soviet Union, back in constitutional hands, and with the Russian Republic, with respect for the way Boris Yeltsin has conducted himself.
So Mr. Bush's delicate diplomatic balancing act continues. His fondest hope that Gorbachev and Yeltsin now will join together and plunge wholeheartedly into reform. The last thing this ever-cautious president wants is to have to choose sides between his friend Gorbachev and a true popular hero. Dan?
Susan Spencer in Maine, thanks. That hero, Boris Yeltsin, a construction engineer by original training, has had a long, colorful political career in the Soviet Union. He is now a force to be reckoned with. Barry Peterson, a longtime CBS News Moscow correspondent, tells us now about Yeltsin, the new Red Star Rising.
For 3 days, Boris Yeltsin rallied his people, saving democracy in the Soviet Union and saving Mikhail Gorbachev at the same time. He was returning the favor because, far more than any other Soviet politician today, Yeltsin is a product of Gorbachev and his reforms.
I would say now that Mikhail Gorbachev owes Boris Yeltsin everything, including possibly his life, but certainly his political life.
It was Gorbachev who brought Yeltsin from the provinces to the Politburo, making him mayor of Moscow. The people loved him, a family man with a reputation for hard drinking and attacking the privileged. But when Yeltsin pushed too hard, he was tossed out of the Politburo. And when the Communist Party wouldn't change fast enough, the 60-year-old populace walked out of the party, turning to the people for his power. He used the new era of democracy to engineer a landslide election as president of the Russian Republic. Not even Gorbachev has faced a popular vote.
Yeltsin is a very good man for Russian people.
But outsiders have often underestimated him. In his first trip to Washington just 2 years ago, he was treated like a country bumpkin, shunned by the White House. But no more. In June, he was the guest of President Bush, and his new stature as an international hero of democracy is not lost on American politicians.
This is the end of the Gorbachev era, and for lack of a better term, I guess we're ushering in the period of the Yeltsin era.
In the wake of the coup, the message in Moscow is clear. Boris Yeltsin seems to be the man who saved the day. Gorbachev is back on the political stage, said one prominent Soviet. But from now on, Yeltsin is the master of ceremonies. Barry Peterson, CBS News, New York.
For context and perspective, joining me now are two people who've helped us cover the coup from start to finish. In our CBS News headquarters, Soviet affairs expert and Princeton professor Stephen Cohen, and in our Moscow bureau, CBS newsman and scholar about the Soviet Union, Jonathan Sanders. First, Jonathan, what happens next?
Dan, there's a reckoning coming. First of all, a political reckoning. First of all, for Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev has to look at what he's done. After all, Gorbachev was the man who picked most of the people who turned against him. Last December, he picked Gennady Yanayev, the vice president who headed this coup. And he said, I want a man beside me who I can trust. What does that say about Gorbachev's judgment? Gorbachev now has to decide whether he pushes ahead with radical reform or whether Gorbachev keeps on with the consensus that brought him people like Pugo, the tough-minded Minister of the Interior. And of course, Dan, there's going to be a reckoning in personnel. Obviously, they're going to get rid of the people who are plotting against him. Gorbachev could write one of those self-help books now, Dan. He could call it, I'm okay, you're in big trouble. A lot of the people in big trouble may not be the plotters, but the people who didn't rise to his defense. But Dan, how many people can Gorbachev purge right away when the economy is in such difficult shape?
Very good question. Steve Cohen, in your view, what's next?
I think Jonathan's basically right. I think there's also some dangers here. First of all, gigantic problems await both Gorbachev and Yeltsin. Secondly, this concept of reckoning, which Jonathan has introduced. Russia is a country that's had so many political trials over the years, so much bloodshed for political reasons. I think the new leadership under Gorbachev, and with Yeltsin's cooperation, is going to have to decide what to do with these coup leaders. I mean, justice would call for a trial, but Russian history speaks out that blood begets more blood. So I think it's a very serious problem what to do with these guys.
Jonathan, we know that it has, among other things, been the night of the long knives in the Baltic republics. What happens there now?
Dan, the troops are still on the move in the Baltic republics as far as we know. Gorbachev has said all along that he wants to hold the Soviet Union together. He's never let the buck of responsibility for the bloodshed stop on his desk. Is this the occasion where he can finally say, it was those men who are plotting against me who forced me to take action against the Baltic states earlier in January, and now I can be a little bit freer, let's compromise? Or is he going to continue with the same, let's put pressure on them, let's have an economic blockade? They're going to sign a union treaty soon, Dan. That's what precipitated this whole coup. And then perhaps they may decide to put economic pressure on the Baltic states. We simply don't know. We're going to have to wait and see on that one.
Stephen Cohen, Yeltsin and Gorbachev sometimes have been about as friendly as fire ants. What happens now?
Well, I think they're going to transcend their past differences. The learnt lesson of this event, this coup, is that they have always been in the same political boat. And not to switch metaphors too fast, but they hang together and they hang separately. And I say that because that though this coup was defeated, the forces that brought about the coup are still in place.
Jonathan Sanders, very quickly, I'm somewhat surprised, but a lot of people in the United States are saying, listen, Gorbachev had to be involved in this. Is there any possibility that he did this as a kind of colossal bluff, a kind of rope-a-dope strategy to improve his own image and blow away his enemies?
Dan, Gorbachev is a political genius in many ways, but I don't think he's smart enough to have thought this one up. I don't think he could have taken a page from Machiavelli's handbook to do this.
And Steve Cohen, I know you think it's ridiculous.
I do think it's ridiculous, even a slander.
Thank you very much. Stephen Cohen, Jonathan Sanders, for your analysis. There's a lot more CBS News ahead. Coming up next, reaction to the failed Soviet coup from Russians here in the United States.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered the 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
Did you hear? Kraft Touch of Butter spread comes in sticks, so your cooking and baking can have that genuine buttery taste. Kraft Touch of Butter sticks are made with creamy butter. A touch of real butter makes a real difference.
I'll get the dressing.
Let's make it fresh. Good seasons.
Dressing's great.
Good seasons, you make it fresh, you make it best.
Kellogg's Cracklin' Oat Bran. So crunchy, sweet, and irresistible, it's gotten you in trouble again.
Is that the last of the Cracklin' Oat Bran?
What should you do?
Is that the last of the Cracklin' Oat Bran? Is that the last of the Cracklin' Oat Bran?
With the crunchy sweet taste of Kellogg's Crackling Oat Bran, an open box is an empty box.
The coup collapses in 3 days that shook the world. Stay with CBS News for the story behind the drama and the dream on 48 Hours tonight.
News of the collapse of the coup in Moscow sent stock prices soaring all around the world. In New York, the Dow Jones Industrial Average up more than 88 points. That's the biggest one-day jump since January. And it wasn't only the stock market that surged. In Berlin, the tension broke and spirits soared when young Germans on a hunger strike outside the Soviet embassy there got word that the coup leaders were out. Yeltsin was standing tall and firm, and Gorbachev was back in power. The twists and turns, the betrayals and deceits in Moscow touched off a 3-day emotional roller coaster ride in many places, including the large Soviet emigre community in New York's Brighton Beach. Correspondent Richard Threlkeld has been out sampling the Brighton Beach memoirs.
There are lots of hyphenated Americans in New York City, but most of the Russian ones live at the edge of Brooklyn, enjoying a lot of things that have long been in short supply in the country they left, like food and freedom. There are 40,000 Russian Americans in this neighborhood, Russian Jews mostly, people with family and friends they left behind. For these people, it's been 3 days of heartbreak and hope. That was all the domino players on the boardwalk were talking about. Mikhail Gorbachev's popular here because he's let so many of these people's Jewish relatives emigrate. So his apparent resurrection has come as some relief, but no surprise to the folks at Mark Rockman's supermarket. Under Gorbachev, Russians have developed an appetite for freedom.
What Gorbachev did, he tell people, look, you can talk, you can go to the strike, you can do everything wherever you feel you're right.
Everybody'd been watching the TV pictures coming from Moscow, showing Russians fighting for what they thought was right. That showed Tamara Romanoff how much things have changed.
When I left the country, no one ever would have done that.
Fight for freedom.
Never.
Even now, when Lily Pon talks about what she's seen on the television, she cries, because now, at last, she can be proud of her Russia.
We were ashamed to live with this constant fear. And now we saw our people not being afraid. So
fighting for freedom.
Fighting for freedom. And it's like a new country.
Something all Americans can appreciate, hyphenated or not. You don't have to be from Brighton Beach to watch what's been happening in Moscow and rejoice. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, New York.
Because sometimes the day ends and the pain doesn't, we're introducing new Tylenol PM. It's more than relief. It's relief for those times when you can't sleep. Tylenol PM has extra-strength Tylenol pain reliever to help stop your nighttime aches and pains, plus a gentle ingredient to help you sleep, so you can wake up refreshed in the morning. From the name you trust comes new Tylenol PM, so you can rest easy.
We've just found a way to make Nabisco spoon-sized shredded wheat even better. Every shredded wheat biscuit is now toastier and crispier because each is toasted through and through. It's almost like we let each little biscuit have its very own great day in the sun. Wake up to Nabisco shredded wheat. It tastes like it's sun-toasted.
A lot of you insist on eating wheat thins and oat thins because they taste good. But the whole idea behind these crackers is that you can eat them without feeling guilty. That's why they're baked, not fried. I mean, eat them because they're delicious, and you miss the whole point.
One use of STP Fuel Injector Cleaner helps remove clogging deposits. And that should be of passing interest to a lot of drivers. STP Fuel Injector Cleaner.
There was a bit of other news in politics in this country. Yet another potential Democratic presidential candidate bit the dust today. Senator Albert Gore of Tennessee said a presidential campaign would be too hard on his family. He will not seek the nomination. Recapping one of the most gripping stories of our time, Mikhail Gorbachev is giving the orders again in the Soviet Union. Air traffic controllers report he's flying back to Moscow right now from house arrest in the Crimea. We expect to show him to you, or at least report that he's back in Moscow on this CBS station very soon. The group of 8 who ousted Gorbachev lasted not even 3 days, 60 hours or fewer. First sign that they had called it quits came this morning when Army tanks and personnel carriers turned around and rumbled out of central Moscow. As the Army left town, the barricades started to come down outside the Russian Parliament building, what they now call the White House. Thousands of supporters of Boris Yeltsin cheered the Army retreat and the victory for democratic reform. We're going to go now to a live picture, the sights and sounds tonight outside that Russian Republican Parliament building. Crowds kneel, talk to one another, smile, give the Russian version of high five, and celebrate. They know that the crisis of the Soviet Union is a long way from being over. But Gorbachev is on his way back, and Yeltsin's stock is up. Our CBS News coverage of the incredible Soviet story will continue tonight on 48 Hours. 3 days that shook the world. The dramatic climax, the difficult and dangerous days ahead. That's 48 Hours. The coup collapses. Tonight at 10 in the East and West, 9 in places in between. Dan Rather, I'll see you again soon.
It begins at dawn. They've come for you. And they want what you have. It's your bed. You're Serta Perfect Sleeper. But it's the most comfortable spot in the house. The Serta surface and support only Serta builds in makes it that way. So if it gets a little late for breakfast, there's always brunch. Is it any wonder people are saying, I want my Serta?
I need a laxative that can work dependably.
Doxadan can.
But can it be gentle?
Doxadan can. Doxadan works dependably overnight with a special ingredient for gentle relief.
Dependable, yes. Gentle, yes.
Doxadan can.
Listen to this. New Depend with Absorb Black Plus is truly making a difference. Dear June, when the local daycare asked for help, I thought, I can do this. But June, it wouldn't have been possible without Depend. New double-layered Absorb Black Plus makes this our best protection yet. The top layer absorbs, the quilted layer locks liquid away. I knew I could give something to those kids, but I couldn't believe how much they gave me. Get back into life.
Now's the time for Centrum Silver, because you're over 50 and you're out there swinging. Centrum Silver, a complete vitamin formula for your changing nutritional needs. Centrum Silver, it's a great time to be silver.
Introducing a car so intelligently engineered, its elegance and grace can be measured along these lines or graded on a curve. The 1992 Oldsmobile 88 Royale, beautifully redefined and nimble enough to prove that a straight line isn't always the best way to get from point A to point B. Oldsmobile, the power of intelligent engineering.
Eye on America. Serial killers. They murder over and over, and when caught, feel no remorse. Who are they? What are they telling us? The story on the CBS Evening News tomorrow.
This is CBS.